So you're up late one night and you're surfing the internet and you come across a bunch of different blog posts and people on like Facebook. I don't know if people still use Facebook, but people on social media saying like, keto diet saved my life. But then you also see people saying the keto diet is a conspiracy or it's a bad thing. But you ask yourself, what exactly is the keto diet? I mean, none of these people seem to know what it is. Well, you know what? Let's talk about the science behind that.
Welcome to The Science Behind That with Atticus Hamilton.
Hello, all you scientists, and welcome on back to The Science Behind That podcast. I am your host, Atticus Hamilton, and as you heard from the intro, that is right, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to be talking about the science of the ketogenic diet. But before we can do that, I want to invite all of you guys to go grab yourselves a nice steaming hot cup of coffee. And while you do that, I do have a little announcement for you guys. The science behind that is now on YouTube. That is right. I now have a YouTube form of my podcast out there. So if you guys want to see longer episodes that are much more like conversationally based, definitely go and check out the YouTube channel. In a couple weeks here, I will be posting some exclusive YouTube-only content onto that channel. So definitely go take a look at that. Subscribe if you want to. If you don't want to, that's fine. If you just rather stick with the traditional podcasts, you know what? That is all right with me. All right. Now that all that is aside, let's jump right into today's episode. But before we can do that, we have to talk some history. I know everyone's like, not history. We have to talk some history and we have to define our terms. First, history. The keto diet was created in 1921 as a treatment for pediatric epilepsy. Now, why would that have been a thing? Well, because frankly, ladies and gentlemen, in 1921, anti-epileptic medication did not exist. So the keto diet was created as a way to treat little kids who had epilepsy. And believe it or not, it was actually effective. It was an effective epileptic treatment for a lot of young children. Now, there were individuals whom it did not work for, but for a lot of individuals, it was effective. However, with the advent of anti-epileptic medication, the keto diet kind of disappeared from mainstream as a therapy. But in recent years, it has been gaining attention with people in the health industry saying it's a good weight loss diet. It helps people who need to lose weight, who want to lose weight. So it has been picking up sort of popularity there. But before we can talk about what it actually is, we need to define a really important term, which is gluconeogenesis. Now, gluconeogenesis is the process by which our bodies synthesize glucose from smaller molecules like pyruvate. So our bodies are actually able to produce their own glucose. It's just not very efficient. We take pyruvate and use that pyruvate to shuttle it down 12 different enzymatic reactions to produce glucose. And then that glucose can be used by the cells or converted to glycogen. Now, how do we get that pyruvate? We get that pyruvate from a process called beta oxidation. And all beta oxidation is it's a chemical reaction whereby we take fats, either saturated and unsaturated fats, and we oxidize them. We break them down into, it's called beta oxidation, but technically we're reducing them. We break them down into smaller and smaller molecules until eventually we're left with either pyruvate or ketone bodies. Now, ketone bodies are really, really important for our talk about what is the keto diet today. And why is that? Because, ladies and gentlemen, ketone bodies are the primary energy source that individuals who are on the keto diet use. Now, ketone bodies are very, very, very small, reduced versions of fats, I guess, if you want to think of them like that. They're very small, very reduced versions of fats. and they're important because they are the primary energy source for the heart. Now, when it comes to the keto diet's main purpose or main goal is so that the patient on the diet reaches a state called ketosis. Now, in a ketotic state, there is no more glucose. The rate of glucose synthesis through gluconeogenesis is too low, so that the body no longer uses glucose as a primary energy source. Instead, the body starts using ketone bodies as the primary energy source. Now, this is really good because, one, the heart only uses ketone bodies pretty much as its energy source. Number two is skeletal muscles are able to use ketone bodies as an energy source. And number three is ketone bodies are actually really effective at getting through the blood-brain barrier and being used by our brains for energy. And that is really important. Sorry, I had to take a sip of coffee there. So that is really important. So just from the onset, it seems like, well, ketone diet. It might as well be called a ketone diet. But just from the onset, it seems like, well, a keto diet, it basically fulfills the same functions that a normal diet does. Well, that is where you'd be wrong, because a keto diet is actually really effective at helping people lose weight. And the reason is because it depends on cutting out simple carbohydrates. So what are simple carbohydrates? Fructose, sucrose, and anything else that is based off of that, right? So breads, fruits, vegetables, stuff like that. Now, in a keto diet, it's not 100%, no carbohydrates. It's just a really low level. So on average, for an individual eating around 2,000 calories a day, they will eat 138 grams of fat, 75 grams of protein, and around 50-ish grams of carbohydrate. And this is on the keto diet. So that is the breakdown of what you eat on the keto diet there. And the fat is really important because the fats that you want to eat are going to be your saturated and your unsaturated fats. And those will be broken down using beta oxidation, and initially they will be fully reduced to pyruvate, which will then be used to produce glucose. However, once a person reaches a keto state, those fats will no longer be fully reduced. Instead, they will be partially reduced down to ketone bodies, and then the ketone bodies will fulfill the goals that we already talked about. So I think everyone's question here is, well, Atticus, that's great and all, but why do people think that it helps with weight loss? And the simple fact is because you're not converting anything to fat. Now, I know that was just like a mic drop. I know some of you are like, what? But you're eating 138 grams of fat. So this is a myth that has been perpetrated by the, first fast food companies, and then the nutritional establishment, at least in the United States, which is in the 80s, there's this idea that if you eat a high-fat diet, you will get fat, because there's this idea that if you eat a high-fat diet, that fat is converted to fat. Which, when we say it now, it's like, hold on. How can fat be converted to fat? You see, it just sounds silly. But the reality is that, that's not what happens. When you eat saturated and unsaturated fats, as long as they're not trans fats, they're not converted to fat. And they're also not converted to LDL. I was the other day reading an article by Harvard. And this was kind of scary, honestly, because it was scary the amount of old medical information that this article from Harvard was reiterating. And it was saying that the keto diet is bad because it raises LDL levels. So me being the scientist that I am, I was like, does it really though? So I did some research, and no, it doesn't raise your LDL levels. It does not raise LDL, or low-density lipoprotein, which is bad cholesterol. It does not raise bad cholesterol more so than any other diet does. And in fact, compared to high carb diets, because those do exist, high carb diets raise your bad cholesterol levels higher. And why is that? The reason that is because saturated and unsaturated fats do not produce low density lipoprotein. Fructose does. Fructose does. So I know that there's probably some of you out there who are like, are you sure about that? I'm positive about that. Fructose, the direct biochemical pathway of fructose metabolism leads to the production of VLDL, which leads to the production of LDL, or bad cholesterol. But beta oxidation does not do that, as we've already discussed. So that's your big reason there why the keto diet helps with weight loss, is because you're not consuming a lot of carbohydrates. And so because of that, because you're not consuming a lot of carbohydrates, you're primarily consuming fat and protein. You're not synthesizing fat to the same degree as you would be if you were on a high protein or high carb diet. Now, it's important to note here that this is kind of dependent on if somebody does at least an hour of exercise a day. And I'm not talking, hardcore weightlifting like I do every day, but like just getting up and walking around for an hour every day. It's really important. It's really important. So what are some of the long-term and short-term side effects? Well, short-term is interesting because people who just start the keto diet, it has been reported that they almost get flu-like symptoms: nausea, vomiting, fever, runny nose. But that only lasts for about a week, and that's called the keto flu. Now, there's very little information as to what causes that, but that seems to be the major short-term side effects, and these, again, subside between 1 and 2 weeks after initial starting of the keto diet. As for long-term side effects, it's really difficult because there's very little research into the long-term side effects of the keto diet. And so because of that, I can't really make assertions on what the long-term side effects are, nor can the medical field, because there just simply is not enough research onto what long-term side effects are of the keto diet. But in the short term, it does appear to be at least a little bit helpful when it comes to weight loss. So am I going to stand here and say, I recommend the keto diet to everybody? Absolutely not. And there are some types of people that I would not recommend it to. If you're like a hardcore weightlifter, I would not recommend the keto diet to you because you need as much glycogen as you can get for weightlifting. But if you're like a runner and you're trying, you're overweight and you're trying to lose fat, it may be an option for you. The keto diet may be it may be a transient diet that you could go on while you're running to help you lose weight at a faster rate. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I hope you learned something. I hope all of you guys have a fantastic week. I will see you on Friday where we're going to talk about cryotherapy. So we're going to talk about cryotherapy on Friday. I'm looking forward to that episode. I personally am a big advocate of cryotherapy. So yeah, that's going to be awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Remember, as always, stand up and question everything.